and welcome back to another episode of my online Vegas tutorial. We're on to episode 4 at the moment. We're going to look at several more editing functions that we have within Vegas, which are quite useful. The idea of a video is that you have moving pictures, and where we have a photograph, and that is very stationary. So what we can do is actually make it move slightly, so it's actually more interesting to the viewer, but also falls in line with the idea of it's a video and it should be moving. Last time we were looking at making a particular video track here, making it go a little bit faster. Okay, and just to remind ourselves what we did, we will do it on this particular part of the video. So now, as we had a transition there, we've actually had to move it up because we're going to have to do the transition again. So if you remember, when we make it faster, we have two options. We can either go on to the right click and then properties, and then we can change the playback rate, or if we're not sure about numbers there, we can hold the control key down and we can drag it smaller to make it faster. Now hopefully if we run it, it should go pretty fast. There we go. That is pretty good. Now obviously there's some delay there because A, I'm recording, and B, my computer is actually quite slow when it renders, so you may not see the full effect until we actually render it. So let's just check in the properties. We have 1.943. I think we had 1.942 yesterday, so it's about right. So it's going to be about double speed. Now the problem is we now have a gap here between the two sections. It's a bit annoying, and if we want to, we'll have to move all of these items separately, which is a bit of a pain really, because you can link them up with the control key. But that's not the point, because there is actually a quicker way to do it. And what we can do is if we go up to the top, and there's an auto ripple button there, which will allow you to move everything from the point that you move it from. So from the beach section, we can move everything, and we have several options. We can affected tracks, all of the tracks, markers and regions, or everything, all tracks, markers and regions, basically everything. So affected tracks will only move the tracks that you are moving, so it won't move anything else. So if you would just have that one, it will probably only move that beach and the flashing lights section. So I always have it on the last option there, which is basically it will move everything. When we drag the beach, oh, we better turn it on first. So click on it and it will highlight. Then when you drag the beach, it will move everything. Now we do have a slight minor problem in the fact that we don't have our transition anymore, so that when it finishes the blog, it will go straight into the beach with no fade. Now if you remember, we did transitions before, so if we drag that back down into the line, we can reapply the transition. I can't remember what transition it was, so we can just have any old transition. Let's see, let's do a different one. Let's do how about iris? I don't know, some of these I don't like particularly. Yeah, circle. It's a circle out. So we'll drag that down and wait for the arrow and then let go. and hopefully now it's applied the transition, and when we finish the blog it will transition. Yeah, because of my computer and the fact we're recording, it wasn't very visible. However, trust me, when you render it, it will be fine. So the auto ripple is quite interesting. However, there is a downside if you forget, because what will happen, it will move everything to the right. Let's put, for example, let's just put something into the project down here. So if I put it in here, nothing happens, it just appears. But if I then put some text over that, so we'll have text, it doesn't matter what one we have, we'll have that one. When I put that in here and we go back to the project, because we have auto ripple on and we've inserted that large piece of text, it's actually moved that picture that we put, which is a really, really annoying feature. But what you need to do is, when you put the text in, is to make sure that you turn that off first and then place your text, and it will stay, and the picture will stay where you put it. So it's a real simple matter of just having to remember that you've got auto ripple on and use it sparingly, because it can be quite useful. I mean, what we'll do is we'll put something into the project here that we'd have to move everything over if we did it manually. So let's put that, let's go and find something that we can put in. Let's put a number 1 in there. So with auto ripple on, if we then drag this down to the gap and then let go, it will move everything along and it will insert the picture that we selected. Now, quite useful, but if our picture is too big, we can actually then adjust the size of it by using the cursor, changing to that, and it will adjust everything else for us. So we haven't got to worry about where it actually, how much space we have. Okay, remember to turn auto ripple off. An interesting factor here that we have a white background, but it doesn't actually fill up the whole screen. So quite a useful editing tip. You have two choices. You can either go into this little square icon, into the event pan and crop. Now you have two choices. You can either change the aspect ratio to no, okay, and it will adjust the frame so that the whole picture appears in the whole video track. However, where you have a proportional picture, it will expand it and make it look very, very unattractive. So the other way to do it is to right click on the actual picture over here and then match the output source, the output aspect, and it will adjust your picture pretty much for the frame. You may need to play around with it because it's not perfect. And for example, you know, here we've got it was off the top of the screen, so I've just adjusted it slightly so that it will appear in the complete frame. We're going to come back later and talk about this timeline here, because this is what we're going to be using to make our animation on our photographs. When you adjust the crop, make sure that your cursor is right at the beginning here with the little diamond shape, because if you, well, you'll see later that if your diamond is down here, it may not begin right at the start of the frame, which could present problems for later on. So just make sure that you're doing your amending with the cursor right at the beginning of the timeline. Okay, So what we're going to do is we're going to find a photo, turn on auto ripple, and then insert the picture. Okay, so go to the beginning of the picture there. Now turn off auto ripple because we don't need that anymore. Now what we need to do is have a white background. So the way that we can do that is we don't want to adjust it for aspect ratio because it won't actually work. So if we adjust this up one track, we can then put a white colour behind it. So if we take our white down, what we can do is crop it so it will fit, and then bring that down, get rid of the other bit, and hey presto, for the hashed number 1, if we want to, we can actually just restore this to how it was and extend the white background. Oops, too far to there. So you can see that now we've got a very nice proportioned picture in a white background, and you can't see the frame outside. So this is what we're going to have. Now what we want to do is a little bit of movement onto the map. So we go to the first part of the map, and we need to get to the timeline. So if we click the event pan and crop, this is our timeline. Now it will be somewhere down here will be our end of our frame. So end of the actual map track part of it and the project. So somewhere down here, over here, is where the map ends and the blog section begins. So if we want to sort of make it animate, so we zoom in to Konken, and Konken is up here in the map. So what we need to do is actually use the zooming in control, and it's not intuitive, but if you take your cursor and you actually move the corner inwards, it grows the map, and then we can adjust the map position to feature the town of Konken, and then zoom in some more. We might need to move it over slightly. So we move that over slightly to there. So it's in the centre of the frame. We could zoom in slightly more, and there we go. If we run it, we can see that we can go through and it will expand all the way through to there. And in real life, if we play it, we have start of the map, and then it zooms in to the Konken. As you can see, that gives you some very nice movement. Now for me, it's not ideal because you have this sort of frame around it, which is still with the actual clip that you're using, because it's a very narrow clip. I mean, you could actually try the same thing with match aspect ratio, but when you run it, you still get the clipping, because as you're zooming in, you're actually reducing the size of the picture. Okay, so it's not ideal, and for me, I don't particularly like that, so I'm going to do it a different way. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete all of those things that we've done so far. And I think the best way of doing this is to put it on its own track, because then you have more control over that track. And you'll see why in further episodes when we do more of this editing and animation, because it does actually present problems for you if you are trying to use this one on another track that has further pieces on it which are used later on. You will find that you will have issues. Anyway, so we put it on this track and there's nothing after it. So we're going to use the track motion this time. So click on the track motion. Exactly the same feature. Now before we start, this is where we put it. This is where we put the cursor. So we're going to click the plus sign just to save the position and all of the information. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this box here and we're going to zoom in using this box. First of all, we need to go to the end of the sequence, which is somewhere up here. Let's see, where are we? Oh, we've gone too far. Right, okay. So the easiest way to find out where the end is to actually go to the end, which is here. And then do it again, because we know where we are. Right, so this is the end of it, and it's not actually that big. Okay, so if we then click the plus sign, we then need to go to the beginning again and zoom in. And what I like to do is take one step to the right, that's one arrow key, and then click again. And this is where we're going to begin. So what we're going to do is go to the end there and then take one step back from there and click the keyframe again. We may need to take more than one step or zoom in more, so you can actually create the keyframe. So the end keyframe, we're going to zoom in now using the creating the box thing here. Lock the aspect ratio, so when we zoom in, it will keep both sides the same. Okay, and then move it over slightly, and then zoom in, and then move it over, and zoom in. So like that. Okay. So what will happen? I know it's a bit blurry on the screen, but when you render this, it'll be okay. So we zoom in, and you can see that the animation is quite smooth now, and it doesn't have the frame around the picture anymore where we did before. So we've animated the process of zooming into the map using the track animation rather than the individual animation. Now there is a difference, because now from here onwards the track will be zoomed in. Now luckily for us, when we did this, we actually saved a normal position. If we put any more things in, they will appear normally on the track rather than the zoomed in section of the track. I know that sounds really complicated, but trust me, I've learned from experience that if you don't put the extra bit in there, then it creates problems when you want to put other things in there. So if we put, for example, this one, or put the logo in there, it will actually appear normally. That is basically how you make an animated zoom in. So there's our thing, and zooming into the map, and then the blog. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. So I'll see you again. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.